people have opinions without being fully informed.
Trust me, I'm a Canadian here.
I don't care if you're a Christian, Messianic, or Hebrew roots. I want to know if your theology is biblical.
Maybe I'm right. Of course I'm right.
If you're going to cite a source, be responsible. Cite your source.
Your mom goes to college.
Hey, we're just having a conversation. There's only 36 people listening anyway, right?
You can Google it.
Wow, at what point does history matter? At what point does truth matter?
An alien invasion. Is it biblical? Of course it is.
Look, there's a way to do scholarship and a way not to do scholarship. You got to cite your source. Who's your source?
My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows his kid is going with the girl.
And that about sums it up. What up, and shalom. Welcome to the Rob and Caleb Show, the show where theology matters, scholarship counts, and theology matters. Sorry about my technical issues. This is one reason I'm not a real producer. What up, Rob? How's it going, brother?
It's going very well.
All right, so for those on the radio, you've already heard this once, and I apologize for that. My skills as a producer are still growing, and I forgot to open up our channels to our YouTube stream in terms of audio. Anyway, so as we were saying, for those who were listening on radio, let's not hold this back any longer. We're bringing a guest on today, and our guest is fellow student and genius of languages, André-Philippe. Now, say your last name for me.
Therrien.
Yeah, that.
Therrien.
Very good, Rob.
Therrien. Yeah?
Sure. Good enough.
So Andre has been a fellow student at TorahResource Institute now for several years. He is. I knew he was going to be a force to be reckoned with when he far exceeded everyone in all of the language classes: Hebrew, Greek. I think you took Aramaic as well, didn't you?
Yeah, this is my last semester of Aramaic.
Good gracious. I'm still struggling in first year Hebrew or first year Greek. He's far beyond me. Anyway, the reason that Andre is a special student at TorahResource Institute
is because I'm Canadian, just like that guy in the intro.
Yeah.
I know. I was going to say, it's like, trust me, I'm a Canadian here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's not the reason why. The real reason why is because Andre is on track now to be the first student at TorahResource Institute to graduate with a 3-year certificate. He will be the first and hopefully not the last.
We'll see.
But it's a great feat, not only for Andre personally, but also for TorahResource Institute. It's very nice to finally have somebody. I was on track to be the first one to graduate with a 3-year certificate, but then I had kids. So there's that. So anyway, our show today is being streamed, and it's not at its normal time. So we're not going to... What?
That's just funny.
We're not going to have a bunch of people in the chat room, I don't think. If we do, that's great, but I don't think we will. And right now, we actually have 6 people in the chat room. Wow, that's impressive. Well, welcome to the chat room, and what up and shalom. So today, we are going to talk to Andre about various things about TorahResource Institute, some of the experiences that he's had, but most of all, we're going to also talk about his thesis. Now, for those who have followed TorahResource Institute or TorahResource in general, you know that Andre actually presented at last year's camp, right? Was it last year or was it a year before?
It was last summer.
Yeah, last summer. Okay, so last summer, Andre presented, and I'm not going to ruin it because he's writing his thesis on this now. We've actually had people write in and challenge your what you said. A lot of what you said actually got wrapped up into our Christmas special and some of our Easter special as well. Actually, Passover special or Easter. I don't know. One of our specials. We have a lot of specials around here. Anyway, so let's dive in. But before we dive in, I do want to say just a couple of things. First of all, don't forget to give us a call on our comment line, 253-465-3205. I'll give it to you one more time. Get your pen and paper ready. It is 253-465-3205. And also, the Rob and Caleb Show is brought to you by TorahResource.com. Go to Torah Resource and find all sorts of great things. And not only that, but sign up for classes at Torah Resource Institute, just like Andre did, 3 years ago?
That's right.
3 years ago. And you only have, one class left, right?
After this semester, yeah.
So after this semester, you have one class left. And what class is it?
Part 2 of History of Christianity, so from the Reformation to today.
And that was
With Ariel Berkowitz.
Yeah, that course 1 and 2, both classes was my favorite course at Torah Resource. Ariel is just an amazing teacher, but not only that, he makes it really fun. It's now, no offense to you, Rob.
None taken. None taken.
That class was it was more like reading a novel than anything else. It just so much information coming through, which is really great. Okay, and also the Rob and Caleb Show is brought to you by YeshuaShirts.com. Go to YeshuaShirts.com. Yep, Andre's sporting it right now. Go to YeshuaShirts.com. Put in the coupon code TRRadio and get 10% off. Okay, so let's get into it. I guess the best place to start, Andre, and Andre's actually sitting next to me. I know it looks like a triple split screen, but it's Andre's actually just, yes, well.
It's too far. There we go.
There we go. Andre's right there. So anyway, so Andre, I guess the best place to start is why'd you decide to take, now, first of all, you're how old?
I'm 24. Just turned 24.
24. So you started classes at Torah Resource Institute when you were 21.
That's right.
Okay. So why did you choose Torah Resource Institute? What was the thought process?
Well, I actually haven't been a believer for a very long time, and maybe a year and a half before I started taking classes, or 2 years, I became a believer, and a year later I joined the fellowship that I'm with now in Edmonton, and I took the new members class there, and when that finished in April of, what year was that, 2013 or 14, 2014, I really wanted to, this was the first time in my life that I felt really strongly that I wanted to study this more, to study, the Bible and history a lot more. But I didn't want to go to a Bible college or some sort of Christian place that would be against my Torah views. I was convinced of Torah, but still I didn't think it'd be a good idea, a good experience for me to do that. And so I didn't know where to go, and I looked up and online and couldn't find anything. And then our pastor had Tim, had your fellow over, Caleb, to teach over one weekend, and you were there to film. And during the break times, you told me what it was like to take classes with Torah Resource Institute. So it's all your fault. So yeah,
I mean, you did it.
Yeah, I didn't really consider any other options. It was to me the choice was just obvious. It's like, I can do this online. It's the price wasn't too expensive, and the classes looked really interesting, and it was with the Torah observant teachers who love Yeshua.
So are you? I mean, obviously this is plugging Torah Resource Institute, which we love to do. But so what overall thoughts? Are you happy that you? That you
absolutely, yeah. Best decision of my life. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm going to come out with an unrecognized, just certificate of completion, right? So it's not worth anything anywhere, but it's the education that I got is worth gold. It's weightier than gold. So.
Well, we're going to talk also where you're going to go from here, because Andre's actually making a move from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and he will be making a move down our way, and so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we do, let's stay on the topic shortly of Torah Resource Institute and some of the work that you did there. So, if for those who might not know the format of Torah Resource Institute, we have most classes you have to write a paper or do some kind of final exam, something like that. So, obviously, 3 years, you're taking 5 classes a quarter.
Average, yeah.
On average. So you're obviously doing a lot of work, but is there maybe 2 or 3 papers that you wrote or things that stuck out in your mind of things that you remember throughout the 3 years?
Well, in terms of, I don't know, I think the paper for me that was the most fun and satisfying to write was the one that I wrote for the Studies in Torah class, in the Torah with Rob Van Hoff, on the issue of the ger in the Torah. because in that class we looked through a little bit of history of how different people, like early Christians like Augustine, and then how later rabbinic interpreters considered different portions of the different important texts in the Torah, and so I can't remember what it is that we read. I think it was on the parasha portion that covers the Ten Commandments. But who was it that was saying? I think it was Rashi. Someone anyway was saying. No, it wasn't Rashi. I can't remember. But one of these,
maybe.
One of these medieval rabbis was saying that the mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, they recognized that meant there were non-Israelites with the Israelites. Well, they were saying that they were kept separate from the mountains, so they weren't at the foot of the mountain with all the other Israelites. They're just, Egyptians and whoever else, they were like somewhere else. And so they didn't receive the Ten Commandments. And I thought, well, that's just absurd. Where do you get this idea? And I thought it would be an interesting question to look at is the ger in the Torah, just because of it's an issue you've dealt on the show here, is the issue of one Torah versus, a view that says that the Jews have commandments that Gentile believers don't, right, to follow. So I disagree with that. And I think the Torah clearly shows, if you look at it carefully, that the status of the ger was expected to want to take part in all of the festivities and rules and ordinances of God's Torah, because they wanted to worship the God of Israel the way the God of the way the God of Israel says he is to be served.
It's interesting that you say that, because the first thing that my mind goes to is God brought the gers, like the ger, out of Egypt too, right? Like he redeemed them from Egypt too.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they come out of Egypt, they want to serve the God that brought them out of Egypt. And just like, he brought them out just like he brought everybody out, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, keep going. So now, was that the paper? You had a paper published in the first... So we've had two now, and you can find this on TorahResource.com. If you go to TorahResource.com and hover over the Institute tab, then go down to the Alumni Quarterly. We've put out 2 Alumni Quarterlies. Your article, one of your articles, was featured in the first Alumni Quarterly. What was that on?
That was for the class on theology proper, where we look at the attributes of God as they're presented in the entire scriptures from Genesis to Revelation. And one of the attributes that struck me as quite important was the immutability of God, which is this idea that he is not dependent upon anything and that he doesn't change, right? And which is in the Torah. There's a few verses that contrast that really clearly between humans and God, right? We change and we're unfaithful and untrustworthy, but he isn't. And I just asked the question, if God's standard of righteousness changes with the coming of Yeshua or with the giving of the Holy Spirit, wherever an evangelical wants to say that happens, then what does that say about God's immutability? Because then his standard of righteousness has changed, and now we don't know, is he just still? Is he, or if he changes, is he trustworthy still? And so I think I'm just asking the question, what do non-Torah views of non-Torah Christians' views of the Torah, how does that affect how we understand who God is? And I think it's bad. So we should affirm that the Torah, that God's standard for righteousness is the same throughout all ages.
Okay, so now, Rob, anything you want to add to this? I mean, you were his teacher, and you were Andre's teacher in numerous classes. Anything that stands out to you that he's written or done?
Oh, just generally, I really have been blessed by meeting and getting to know Andre and his heart for the Lord and his really sharp mind and ability to make real keen observations and to ask good questions that reflect thoughtful interaction and engagement with all the different topics that we dive into from course to course. It's quite a buffet. If you look at all the different course offerings, that we have on the table, as like this buffet, and to realize that Andre has gone through and
almost all of it.
demonstrated really strong competency in all these areas. It's wonderful. It's just such a wonderful thing to be part of that, and to hopefully be an encouraging voice to Andre as well as other students who are years ahead of me. If when I was Andre, when I was your age, I hadn't really thought about the Bible being in Greek or Hebrew or stuff like that.
You still had a mullet, huh? You still had a mullet.
Yeah,
you were playing in a band.
I didn't even know what a Hebrew word picture was at that time.
For those who haven't seen Rob's mighty mullet, please go to our Facebook page and look at our pictures.
Did you put it up there?
I think that there's a couple of mullet pictures, and I'm not positive, but I think that there might be some acid wash genes in there as well.
The 80s call, they want their haircut back.
Okay, so now, you've talked about the paper that you wrote on the GARE, and you've talked about the one that you wrote that was published in the quarterly. Is there one more that stands out to you, or?
It was the paper that I wrote for Tim Hagg's class, the Messiah and the Tanakh, where I read through a little bit of Rambam's was it Guide to the Maimonides' Guide to the Perplexed, I think. Was it one of his writings where, and I just through a PDF document I tried to search for every occurrence where he talks about these passages in the Torah, like in Genesis 18, where it says that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh appears in the flesh and eats meat, a meal of meat and milk, ironically, and just how does Rambam rationalize this away, because they can't have rabbinic Judaism can't have a physical a God who has a physical form, because that's giving credence to maybe what we would say how we say God has appeared in history.
Sure.
In Yeshua. So that was interesting.
Okay, so let's move now to your thesis, because your thesis is an interesting one, and you seem to have had a lot of opportunities that other students probably will never have. For instance, well, first of all, one of the reasons I think that you're so good at language studies is because English is not actually your first language, right?
I learned English when I went to daycare.
Learned English when you went to daycare, so your first language is?
French.
So I think that people who are bilingual from a young age have a much easier time learning languages later in life. I could be wrong about that, but I think that you're the proof in the pudding. But that's not what you're writing your thesis on. Tell us a little bit about what you're writing your thesis on, and then after that we'll get into some of the opportunities that you've had concerning your thesis.
Okay, so I'm writing my thesis on a book called The Two Babylons, which is very easy to find online, written by a man, a minister in the Free Church of Scotland in 1858. Well, actually, it was written in 1853. That's the thing. There's multiple editions, and it grew from the first to the second edition. But the edition that everyone reads online is the third or fourth edition. Anyway, sorry. Getting into the details already. So
this is good.
In this book, in The Two Babylons, Alexander Hislop argues that the Roman Catholic Church is he presumes with every other Protestant of his age that the Roman Catholic Church is the beast of Revelation 17 and 18. But beyond that, what he says is that Roman Catholicism is entirely and completely genetically related to the pagan Babylon of Genesis 11, so before the dispersion of the Tower of Babel, right? So he's taking a biblical view of all of human history, but he's saying that from before the dispersion, elements of whatever that pagan religion was back then are all of Roman Catholicism. And so as I've been reading and studying him, I realized what was the one thing that was special about his thesis that put him apart from everyone else, and that's what it is. It's that everything Roman Catholic is pagan in origin. Others of his day, like many reformers would have said that the Pope is the man of sin, or the Antichrist, or that Rome is the beast of Revelation. None of that is new. And some of them might have said that they're pagan theologically, but none of them would have said that, the doctrine of doctrines relating to Mary or to transubstantiation come directly from ancient Babylon, 2000 BC and earlier. But this is what Alexander Hislop would say, and that's what he tries to prove in his book. Yeah, there we go. That's the summary.
Okay, so that's the summary of. It seems like that's more the summary of Hislop's Two Babylons. What is the goal or the meaning of your thesis? What are you attempting to show?
Right. Well, the problem is that this edition, this book has been republished and reproduced, and like I said, it's really easy to find online. And lots of teachers in Protestantism, maybe in general, in English-speaking evangelicalism, and in the Hebrew roots and Torah observant movement, have been influenced by his ideas and by his theory, and also his methodology. And they repeat what I think is misinformation or just things that we don't know or haven't proven, or maybe that can't be proven. And this includes, especially in the Hebrew roots movement, the argument that I'm sure a lot of people have heard on the radio, who listen to this radio, that Christmas and Easter are pagan in origin. And for example, that I seriously question, especially when it comes to Easter. So this is the reason I'm writing this thesis, is so that we get a better view of who Hislop was, what he was trying to accomplish, and if there's any good in the Two Babylons, what that is. And then I want to go over all the things that Hislop did wrong, and I just want to call believers and teachers to, especially teachers who have a higher responsibility, right? As who's it, James or Peter who tells us that?
James, yeah.
Especially teachers to be more careful and more studious, and to work hard to try before they speak and before they teach things that other people are just gonna take and run with. Yeah.
Let's go back for a few seconds, because a lot of people, obviously, people who listen to this show on a regular basis are going to know about our Christmas special that we did last December. They're going to know about our Passover special. And we usually do, in concert with a Passover special the week before, we usually do an Easter special as well. I don't remember if we did that this year, but we did talk about some things that had to do with Easter. It might be a shock for some of our newer listeners, and maybe a shock for people that are still in the Christian church, or maybe more of a shock for people in the Hebrew roots movement, to hear you say that Christmas and Easter might not have pagan origins. Let's open that can of worms for just a second here. So when we talk about Hislop, when we talk about Two Babylons, why would you believe that something like, say, Christmas or even obviously Easter, everyone knows that the big talking point on Facebook around the time of Easter is that it comes from Ishtar, right? It's the goddess Ishtar. So why would you say that these don't have pagan origins? Isn't it obvious?
Right. Well, okay. So that's a good example. So this is what Hislop does in his book all the time, and so Easter sounds like Ishtar, right? And maybe it's possible that there is a link between these two words. I don't think so, and your dad's written a paper against that understanding. But that's making a huge assumption, or making a huge conclusion just based on etymology, and that's not what you have to do. The name of the feast, or the name of the celebration, can have nothing to do with the celebration. It just might be because of the time of the year or something. But if you want to look at whether the celebration is pagan in origin or not, you have to go, you have to see who celebrated it at the first time, and when it started to be called this or that. And so when it comes to Easter, well, Easter is just the English and German name for the celebration of Pascha, which is a celebration that all Christians, almost all Christians in all of Christian history have celebrated, which is, I suppose, maybe the Christian Passover or something, which is Passover without the Jewish elements, without Exodus, and without just thinking about the resurrection and who Yeshua was and what he did. And so, that's where Easter comes from. And that's, we can look at the church fathers, and we can look at who celebrated this from the earliest times, and as far as we know, it's the earliest Christian celebration.
Okay. But maybe the argument would be posed: oh, Andre, you just want to have a Christmas tree in your house. You just want to go to your Christmas, your family's Christmas gathering, and that's why you're championing this outlook.
Well, personally, I don't really care if anyone celebrates Christmas or not. I think the custom having a tree in your house is a little weird. And if I was to do it, I would want to give like some sort of biblical theme or reason for it, right? But otherwise, I mean, I don't celebrate Christmas. I haven't helped my parents set up the tree in a long time, and yeah, I mean.
So in other words,
not,
what I hear you saying is that you have no personal attachment to these things. You're just trying to look at sources for what they are.
Yeah, I'm concerned with people knowing what is true and with establishing the truth with certainty, and and valuing the hard work that goes along with finding out what truth is, right? That's what scholarship is all about, and historical inquiry is all about.
Rob, do you want to jump in here at all? I'll just keep going if you don't have anything, but go for it.
I wonder if, Andre, if you could unpack, kind of go even a little more general in this principle. So basically what you're doing in your thesis is zeroing in on one example of a larger problem that you just kind of talked about a couple minutes ago about what makes scholarship good, right? What is our way of learning to discern a good method versus an erroneous or faulty method, and then the types of disciplines that are involved with establishing that, what we want to say is a good and proper and healthy method for the sake of teaching, right? For the sake of advancing knowledge to the best of our ability. And it's not an easy task, but I guess if I were to ask you a question, I would say, do you see, and because we also quoted James chapter 3, and I started thinking about the tongue, a little flame can kindle a huge fire, right? That's one kind of, and that, I don't know that I would say Hislop is a flaming tongue that has set a whole forest on fire. But the picture there is that someone who is out there with a message that is inaccurate, but yet sounds good and is catchy, people take it and run with it, and it expands, and now it creates a certain kind of job for like you to go back and try to say, okay, we got to rein all this in, because it's really now with YouTube and everything out there, people are getting distracted and excited about the wrong kinds of things. It's not that we don't want people excited about the word and excited about what they're learning, but it's like we want that to be what is good and true and right and proven, etc. Right. Anyway, Kate, what are your thoughts along those lines in terms of a larger general need in the body of Messiah with respect to knowledge?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Basically, if teachers want to inquire, if teachers want to be teaching the Bible and God's Word, or if they want to be teaching any principle or any history, they have to do the groundwork of looking at their sources, and they have to do the groundwork of considering their methodology of how they're going about this, and the logic between what they're saying.
There's a weighing out, right? I mean, if you think, the whole it's almost a poem, right? James chapter 3 about the tongue. How does James chapter 3 start? Let not many of you become didaskaloi, teachers, because we will incur the stricter judgment. And then he talks about the man who's able to, who will not stumble in his word, is the perfect man. And then he talks about the horses with bridles, the ships with rudders, and all this kind of thing. It seems like all this wonderful, vivid portrayal of the dangers of erroneous speech or evil speech, etc., is framed under the larger category of don't just be a teacher, right? Don't just consider yourself a teacher. Recognize that there's a weighty set of disciplines and obligations and responsibilities pertaining to that role.
Okay, I want to jump in here. I'm sorry to jump in.
That's okay.
What did he answer your question, Rob?
I
It was
don't
a
even know
long
if I asked.
question.
I don't
Okay.
even know if I asked. Sorry.
Okay, no. Because the chat room has a question, and thank you for everybody who's in the chat room right now, and thank you also to Gary and to Michael, who basically help produce this show in their own ways, and so I hope that we got Rob's audio working right. Mary asks in the chat room, she says, Andre stated he didn't believe these holidays, that is Christmas and Easter, have pagan origins. Can he answer then why he doesn't celebrate them? So I think that the question is obviously if they're not pagan, then why not celebrate them?
Because I have other things to do on the 25th, and it's a public holiday. So I mean, when I was working, it was great. It was a day for me to do homework. So I mean, okay, but the reason I think maybe is that it's not the Bible. It's not commanded. So I don't feel any obligation to do it. But when it comes to Easter, well, Easter's on the wrong date, and it's been separated from the week of unleavened bread and from the Jewish Passover because of church history. So I'm not gonna celebrate it on the wrong date with the wrong focus. I think the messianic focus of Passover, of looking at both the Exodus and the cross at the same time, that's the way we should be celebrating it. We can't the Christian celebration of Easter completely forgets Israel and the story of the redemption from Egypt.
Yeah, growing up, my experience was the same way. It was there was no connection, whereas it's clear in the Gospels that these are together. Right?
Yeah, and it's at the wrong time. So
Right.
it's not following the Jewish calendar.
Is Rob loud enough for you, by the way? Sorry.
I can hear him.
Yeah? I'm going to bring him up just a hair. Okay. I hope that answered the question. I think that for me, I still wrestle with where some of the Christmas things come from. And I know that, Rob and I, you can always go back and watch our Christmas special. Rob disagrees, and that's fine. But I would never be dogmatic about it. However, there's enough question for me that I'm not going to, be putting up the holly and the mistletoe. And it seems that there is some pagan, maybe some pagan influence that has come in from some places, and because of that, I would avoid Christmas. Your explanation of Easter, though, is a very good one. And for me personally, and then, once again, this is personal, I have a family, obviously not my parents, but I have in-laws and whatnot that celebrate Christmas and Easter. And so it's, for me, I have relatives that are strong believers, and they're celebrating Easter, and to them, they think that they're celebrating basically the same thing I am during Passover, and they don't understand why I wouldn't be a part of that. So my wife and I actually go to, the Easter brunch that they put on every year. They don't have, they've made sure that they don't have ham on the table or anything like that. And my children don't take part in Easter egg hunts or anything like that. But we do enjoy talking about the resurrection and about the Messiah. And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Now, of course, there's people out there who are going to. I'm sure my inbox will be flooded with people telling me I'm a heretic, which is fine. Okay, I will continue to read some more of the chat room while Andre goes on, but this whole study that you're doing for your thesis, you touched on this just a little bit earlier, and let's get back to it. You said something about kind of the influence that we've seen within Protestantism, but also within the Messianic and Hebrew Roots movement. So how has Hislop actually, are there things that you can think of directly that have influenced the Messianic and Hebrew Roots movement by Hislop's Two Babylons?
Right. So, I guess there's the sort of mythology that we're told in the Hebrew Roots movement relating to the origins of Easter or Christmas, where, I'm sure some people maybe have heard, what's her name, Semiramis dying and going to heaven, but then being rejected by heaven and coming back down in the form of an egg and hatching, and I don't know, bunnies being all a part of it. And I don't know. So the stories themselves, maybe, and the total non-historicity of some of the stories that are being told is one problem. Another problem, for example, has to do with etymology. And a few shows back, You guys talked about someone who, well, I don't know, I heard someone, you were talking about someone who was saying that the Greek god Bacchus or Roman god Bacchus, came from Bar Cush. Well, this is exactly the kind of thing that Alexander Hislop would do in his book all the time. Is he would look at the name of a place or a festival or a god, and then just put it back into what he would call Chaldean, which was either Hebrew or Aramaic. And if there was anything that sounded close enough, he might change a few letters here and there. It might be a different consonant, but if there was anything that was close enough, he'd relate it to it, and then it's like, oh well, this is what it means and where it comes from. And actually, ironically, as I told Rob in an email, Alexander Hislop does give the Greek name, or I don't know, a different Greek name for it's the Ethiopians. I think he says that their name means like descendant of Ethiops or something. So it's like son of Cush, but in Greek. But he still relates it to the same. I don't know. It's the same thing that happens, but in Greek instead. And anyways, there's no. This is not a method where you're proceeding from known facts and connecting dots together that can be solidly connected. For example, I don't know. To give a silly example, the second half of my first name is Philip, which comes from Greek Philippos, which means lover of horses. I've ridden on one horse in my life, I think, and it was not a pleasant experience for me. So, etymology doesn't actually tell you anything about where it comes from or who it is very often. And another example is within the sacred name movement, people say, Baal means Lord and Adonai means Lord. Therefore we can't use the title Adonai.
Oh, I know. I've heard. Oh, golly.
So that's maybe a similar example.
So why are you saying Lord? Well, it's the same as Baal. You're saying you might as well just. It's just crazy.
Yeah,
but that's silly even because in Jeremiah, the Lord uses Baal.
Yeah.
Himself as like husband or Lord.
Yeah, and David calls the name of a city, what is it, Baal Zephon, or I can't remember. No, Baal Perazim, I think. And it's actually referring to Hashem, to Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, winning this victory for David, but he calls it Lord of, and he uses the title Baal instead. So David didn't think it was wrong.
So I want
to if I may, just a footnote there, because that's another example, kind of back to that larger general principle. It's like someone who's short-circuiting the system, right? That this word sounds like this word, and they put them together, and all of a sudden, there's electricity, and then they can sell books and go out and get people excited. And then people have some sort of association of excitement or thrill of new knowledge. I wonder if they get addicted to that or something.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
and it's easy to do.
And then they
you just have to be creative.
That with truth. Yeah, now they're associating whatever this excitement or sensationalist kind of feeling that they have with truth, and they didn't have to labor for it. There's absolutely no labor involved. They didn't have to learn Hebrew, and I called this, like, many times I've started Hebrew classes, like wherever I was living locally, and you see, like, it's hard, right? Language is hard, but you get early on. There's people who want to come and learn, and then they want to talk about the word pictures, and they want to start reading that way. And it's like once they learn that that's not what Hebrew class is, at least the way I'm going to teach it, those are one among the first to like drop off because they already have their little code book and they are ready to go interpret. Anyway,
right? But it's all it's short circuiting and it's fruitless because there was no work put into it.
Good point.
Okay, I want to take a little rabbit trail here. We'll get back to your recent excursions for your thesis in a few seconds. But Mary once again has a follow-up question. She says, with regard to Christmas, she says, I believe you mentioned your parents did so. You probably grew up with it. So what was the changing point? Day off, as you say, or is it more? So, and earlier in the interview, you said that you came to the Lord when you were 20, 21 years old. Yeah. So, were you raised in a believing home? Well, when did you how did you come to faith in the Messiah?
Well, I come from my parents are both French. They're French Canadians, so the the religion of the culture was, when they grew up, was Roman Catholic. So that's sort of what they raised me as until a certain age, and then we just stopped going, and my parents stopped trying to inculcate those values in me. But I was sent to Catholic school, French Catholic school, from all the way to through grade 12. So I don't know. I think it was even before I became a believer that I was telling my parents, well, this is a silly holiday. It's just a big commercial thing, and we're all getting stressed about buying each other's gifts. So I told them, how about we don't buy each other gifts? And they were like, oh, well, that's a good idea. So yeah, I mean, for them, Christmas is a time to get with friends and to celebrate, but they're not really believers.
So a non-religious holiday.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, it was for them, it wasn't a big deal that I didn't participate or yeah.
Sure. Okay, so now the part that I've been waiting for.
Okay.
I'll tell a little story first. When I was in Israel, I knew I was going to have to get out of the country for a certain amount of time so that my visa could be renewed. On the top of my list of places I wanted to go was Scotland. I have yet to go to Scotland. Instead, I went to Austria and Switzerland. When I traveled later, I went over to Germany, Denmark, and Sweden. So I have yet to make it to my number one place on my list. However, I am living vicariously now through Andre, who just got back from Scotland. And you went to Scotland for your thesis, right?
That's right. And the ironic part, I guess, after this intro is that I didn't play the tourist. So
you didn't play the tourist.
No.
Michael wants to know if you tried haggis.
I tried vegetarian haggis.
Oh, that's not haggis.
I was going to, but I don't think it's kosher. It's got suet in it. So I think if you want like biblically kosher, you'd have to. There is a Orthodox kosher deli in what's the other city in Scotland? Starts with an S. Glasgow. Sorry, it doesn't start with
Glasgow?
an S. In Glasgow, there's an Orthodox deli there that makes some, but I wasn't going to travel to Glasgow for haggis. And yeah.
Aren't you a vegetarian?
Yeah. I would have tried some though, if I could have, if it was kosher, right? So. Okay,
so tell us. Now you said you didn't go to play the tourist. What did you go for then? How did it relate to your thesis?
I went most days. I went to the National Library of Scotland. And so this is a research library. It's not like any university or public library I'd been to before. And basically they have all sorts of documents of all kinds from Scottish history. And you can, and it's for research. You request them and they bring them to you, and then you can't leave the space with these books because, I mean, I was reading, the books that I was reading from Alexander Hislop were printed in the 1850s. Right, so some of them the binding was breaking off, and the back was breaking off, and they have these little, what is it called? They have some sort of system of cushions, and you have weights to keep the pages open. And so basically, I took pictures of every book that everything that Alexander Hislop ever published that is cataloged in libraries. That's what I went to do.
Did you have to wear white gloves?
No, no, the documents weren't that old or fragile. It was. The paper was still.
It's not like there's a cigarette hanging.
No.
With an inch of ash. That's like those old Dead Sea Scroll pictures. They're like, they got cigarettes.
They're smoking
and they're
over there.
Scotch taping these fragments together.
Okay, so but let's go back. Maybe someone might say, well, what would the point of even doing that be? I mean, I'm sure you could find that stuff online, right?
No, you can't. That's exactly. That's the problem. So even the Two Babylons, there are three. The main edition that everyone has is the fourth edition. There's not many differences between the third and the fourth, but between the first and the second and the third edition, there's a lot of differences in size and in footnotes and in images. The first edition was actually only a pamphlet. It was like 60 pages. The second edition was 400 something pages, right? So yeah, and I also, that's the thing. None of his other books were available online, so they haven't been republished, reprinted.
And this is going to be.
They've just been forgotten by history.
On the cover of Andre's book, never before.
Yes,
yes.
The mystery revealed
from the world's oldest library.
I'm gonna hire you for my marketing.
Laboriously collected for the first time published in one place.
Well, no. We all know that what you have to do is put the words mystery and key and revealed into your title somehow, and then you'll just sell millions of copies.
Jewish and Yeshua or something.
Okay, so how long were you in Scotland then for?
That's funny. 10 days? I don't know. I can't remember.
And you basically went to the library every day. Did you just rent a hotel next to the library, basically?
A hostel.
Nice.
A lot cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah, and I got to witness some people. So.
Awesome. So every day you went to, and what was the basic goal? To actually not to sit there and read per se, was it, or was it more?
Yeah, it was to get a picture of every page of everything that he'd published.
So did you take a scanner?
No, I took pictures. We weren't allowed scanners.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and also to get a better sense of his context as well. So I did read a few other documents. He does respond to. I mean, he does attack he does attack the Episcopal Church in a pamphlet, and then I found a response to that pamphlet, and then he responded to it. So that was interesting. And then
is the rest of his work wackadoo like Two Babylons is?
Well, no, not as much. But it is very. I don't know, it's very influenced by its time. So, for example, the first book that he ever published was in 1846, and it's called The Light of Prophecy. And in it, he goes over 2 Thessalonians 2, chapter 2, verses 3 through 12, and goes through every point, line by line, and explaining how this fits exactly with Roman Catholicism. And, well, so, I mean, it's biblical exegesis. Some of it is true. I mean, some of these things that he's pointing out with Roman Catholicism is true. But then at the same time, I can see that he's sort of blinded by his context because he's not asking, he's only thinking like Europe and
Sure.
18th century, right? He doesn't know that, in 100 years, most people are going to be atheists, in the West or unbelievers. I don't know. And, he's not thinking of like the wider world, Buddhists and Muslims and other religions. So I sort of veered off your question. Are the rest of his works as cuckoo? Well, I mean, yes and no. The rest of his works are more anchored, are more similar to other works that have been published at the time. So, for example, he published a pamphlet against a professor who was teaching something different on infant baptism. Okay, and this is the thing that I discovered, and that people need to understand when they're reading Alexander Hislop. He was a minister in the Free Church of Scotland, which was a split from the main Church of Scotland in 1843 over the issue of the right of patronage, which was that the Church of Scotland was saying rich people had the right to basically determine who was the minister in a parish because they had the money. And so this more evangelical, more conservative group was saying, no, this is nonsense. What if the guy who's ministering to us is not biblical enough? What if he's veering off into Catholicism or something? We can't fire him. So that was the issue over which they separated, and the Church of Scotland and the Free Church held to the Westminster Confession of Faith as their founding document. And the Church of Scotland was founded by John Knox, who was a reformer who did spend some time getting to know Calvin and in schools in Geneva. And so these people were infant Baptists, they were Presbyterians, they believed in replacement theology, and a whole bunch of other things. And so, when he's writing against the Episcopal Church of Scotland, he sees them as sort of compromising and towards Roman Catholicism, and that's what he's afraid of. And he's, in the news, like I read one article from the 1850s where it's talking about I'm jumping ahead. One big part of the context of his era was that Protestants in Britain were afraid of the encroaching of the reintroduction of Roman Catholicism into England, and they were proud of the Protestant heritage and identity of Great Britain, or Scotland and England, and they didn't want to lose that, and they were scared of losing that, and the Catholics were having more influence and power in their day in Britain. And for example, in the 1830s and 40s, there was this movement called the Oxford Movement, which were high church Anglicans who were publishing pamphlets arguing for Roman Catholic practice and teaching. And some of them even became Roman Catholics. If you've ever heard of, that's the story of a Bishop Cardinal Henry Newman. who was an Anglican bishop before he
switched
betrayed,
sides.
before he became a turncoat. And well, that's how people were.
Sure.
They were so worried about the encroaching influence of Roman Catholicism. And so there's, Alexander Hislop publishes a pamphlet against the Scottish Episcopal Church because they're having a problem with one of their bishops arguing for transubstantiation, which is a Catholic doctrine that Protestants have historically argued against, and that I also believe is false. And so, he's so worried about Roman Catholicism encroaching that he's like, anything Protestant that's sort of close to the edges, he's gonna point and shoot at. And that's the other thing that people need to realize when they're reading the Two Babylons, is that in it he, for example, he sort of demonstrates how the Trinity comes from paganism. But what he means when he's saying that, and if you read carefully through his book and through his other writings, and if you know that he's a minister of the Free Church of Scotland who has to uphold the Westminster Confession of Faith, then you know that he's not actually talking against the biblical doctrine of the Trinity. What he's saying is that even the true doctrines, even doctrines in the Catholic Church that are biblically true, come from paganism. Okay? So when the Roman Catholic Church says we believe in the Trinity and the full deity of Yeshua, he says, he says, well, but even that's not, even that's false. Where you guys get that from? Because we have that too, but
we
ours
have the
is
real
true.
kind.
Yeah, we have the real kind.
Yours comes from paganism.
Right. So, and that's another problem, because I've heard, lots of Messianics or Hebrew roots are falling on that issue, on the deity of Yeshua, and some of it might be because of how they understand the two Babylons, for example.
Well, they get it from paganism.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, I think that's.
No, what I hear you saying though is there is a. You use the word he's afraid of. They want to preserve a purity over against a projected impurity, and they don't want any stain or dilution of what they value so much. Right? They value this one thing so much, and they see it's being threatened, and so they're just doing whatever they can to make sure that those never touch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like meat and cheese.
Yeah.
Except you don't eat cheese ever. It would be like
right.
Okay, so wait now. I was made aware by you, actually. I did not know this, that there's actually two Alexander Hislops. Talk about the difference between the two.
Oh yeah, and this is funny because I saw someone reprinted a book from the other Alexander Hislop from Edinburgh, who lived in Scotland in the 1850s. Someone had purchased this book on Amazon and wrote a review on it, and she was like, I've read other of Hislop's things, but this is just nonsense. It's not even worth reading to children. And what she didn't realize, and I also corrected the library at the at New College at the University of Edinburgh. I told the librarians they had a mistake in their cataloging.
Yeah, right.
Because there's two different Alexander Hislops who were publishing in that day. One of them was...
Wait, we should have given you cards, Torah Resource Institute cards. Excuse me, there is a mistake in your catalog. I'm from Torah Resource Institute.
They didn't tell you I'm coming, did they? Right on. No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So wait,
the librarian, Andre, the librarian heard you out?
Oh yeah. She was like, yeah, okay, we'll keep. She took a note and said we'll send it to our catalog keepers and it'll get fixed. And so there's two different Alexander Hislops. One was a publisher. He wrote things like a book like on the Proverbs from Scotland. So nothing to do with the Bible, just like Proverbs, like common, saying folk sayings. And he was a publisher. He owned his own publishing press. I think he lived in Edinburgh. I could be wrong about that. And he published after Alexander Hislop, the minister, died. So that's how you know that there's two different people. And also the content is totally different.
Yeah,
Alexander Hislop, he always starts his the one that I'm reading about always starts his books with he's a minister in the Free Church of Scotland in East Arbroath, in the congregation of East Arbroath. Sometimes he'll say the presbytery, and then the content is always focused on the Bible or on Catholicism or on Protestant issues of his day. So you can tell that there's two different people publishing at the same time with exactly the same name, and they're both Scottish. So.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of our interview. I got one last wrap-up question for you, and that's basically let people know. It's a big for us, for Rob and myself, since I work for Torah Resource. Obviously, for my father, Tim Haig, and for the rest of the staff at Torah Resource, it's you're making history for the school by becoming the first person to graduate with a 3-year certificate program. That is saying that you complete your thesis and finish your last class without going off to some other university and forgetting about us. Why don't you tell us what you're doing? You're actually moving down here to Tacoma, Washington.
Yes.
And that's because you are going to another university now. Where are you going?
I've been enrolled to go to and been accepted into UPS, the University of Puget Sound, which is in Tacoma here, not far from where we're recording this.
You could walk from here.
Yeah, exactly.
In probably about 10 minutes.
So, yeah, I don't know. There's a number of reasons for this move, but I mean, one of the things is I want a degree now because I want to get a master's. I don't really care for the degree. I feel like the education I've gotten at Torah Resource is way more than I could get at any Bible college for this, for 4 years. And so, anyways, the degree is just going to be, maybe in humanities or arts. I'm going to try to learn some German so I can read German scholars, maybe some Latin, so to help me with reading older Christian sources. And I don't know, we'll see what else I'm going to take and focus on while I'm there. But I wanted to be close to this congregation as well. And yeah.
Back when, let's see here, I was 16 years old. I actually was part of the University of Puget Sound Touring Orchestra and String Orchestra.
Oh,
so
yeah?
I've spent some time on that campus, and it's changed substantially in the past 17 years, 18 years since I was kicking around that campus. It is by far, I would say it's probably in the top 10 most gorgeous campuses in the United States today. It is very
it's
it is just absolutely beautiful, and it's if any of our listeners are ever in Tacoma and you want to relax and just be able to free the mind and some beauty, then walking through the UPS campus is definitely one of the things that you can do. And right now, they're actually redoing one of the fountains there. I rode my bike through the campus just the other day. So congratulations. We're mighty proud of you, and we're mighty excited for you to not only be down here in our neck of the woods, but also to be the first student at Torah Resource Institute to graduate with a 3-year certificate. And what an accomplishment it is. I'm in the same program. I think I'm in my 6th year. I'll probably turn it into 9. It's a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. There's no doubt about that. So
yeah, it's work.
Yes, for sure. Okay, Rob, anything else you want to ask or say before we take off? And tonight is Shavuot for us. So
I would just one thing, Andre, if you had an encouraging word for maybe some listeners, some first-time listeners or old listeners, old meaning old, one of the original 36ers. Just they are kicking around the idea of maybe diving into a Bible language study or specific history or something, but they're feeling a little maybe overwhelmed by the scope. Can you just give some words of encouragement, pertaining to, you don't, the time, right? The time and the hard work, and then, but the satisfaction and then the joy on the other side of that.
Okay, well, maybe with regards to how I've tried to manage my time and learning. Well, the first thing is that if you take a live class, like we have live classes every week for all the language classes at Torah Resource. You have, then there's a pace that is set for you that helps you keep going forward. And if you just keep going through, you just do one chapter at a time, and you focus on that, and you focus on the homework and you take it one step at a time. The textbooks, the grammars that they're using for Greek and for Hebrew are very well written grammars, and we're thankful to Hashem for these scholars who put them together. Just taking the class forces you to or I don't know. For me, it set the pace, and it didn't allow me to forget about it or let life sort of take it out of my way. It takes time, but once you get at a certain level of learning, you usually maybe at the end of 1 year of Greek or 1 year of Hebrew, you have enough to keep studying on your own and to start reading the Bible on your own. And at the first, it's probably going to be pretty challenging. But what I've found was very helpful for me to keep growing and learning more vocabulary and also getting used to reading the original languages is to decide on a book that I want to read through in the Apostolic Scriptures or in the Tanakh, and to just go through it. And every word that I don't know, I'll put it in a flash card software that I have. And that's another thing maybe that to encourage people would be to get some sort of flash card software, because like Anki, for example, is free on the internet, and you can it knows when to represent cards to you, and it's a lot easier than having like 1,500 cards that you're sorting through to try to learn your vocabulary. And so yeah, but just going through a book of the Bible, choosing, like. Or maybe going through the parasha portions actually is another really good way to do this, because they're small, bite-sized, that you could do every week. And so if you just go through those in the original languages, over time your vocabulary is going to grow. And that's the thing; it's over time, but eventually, like at the point where I'm at now, I can pick up a section of the Bible that I've never seen before, and understand most of it, most of the words. And not have to think too hard about the syntax to understand what I'm reading. So it takes time, but at the end the reward is, and I don't know if I should say this, you guys might get emails, but the reward is that God's inspired the original text in the original languages. He hasn't inspired the translations. Now, we thank God for the translations that we have, and we have very well done translations, and God's word is pure and true in these translations when they're well done, but God didn't inspire the NIV or the ESV. He didn't inspire the King James. He didn't inspire any French Bible or anything. He inspired the text that the original writers were writing in. And if that's as close to the text as you can get. That's as far into the mysteries as you can delve, and it's only a few years of work, and you're there, and you have the tools to. Look at God's word unadulterated or something,
On that,
and deal with all the issues yourself.
Let's say someone, thank you for sharing that. I'm just on the flip side. Let's say someone, you know what? I can just learn all this by myself. What would you tell the person that says, you know what? I have the internet. I have YouTube. I can learn everything that you learned, Andre, and I can do it on my own. Without any teachers, what would you do? Would you have anything to say to that person?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is that in Yeshua's ecclesia, in his kingdom, the method of teaching and of learning is relational. It's discipleship is a person to person. It's not something that's impersonal. Yeah, and on more practical side, like who's going to correct your homework, and what encouragement are you going to get from a YouTube teacher, or from a textbook without any human there to any friend in the Lord to help you along and encourage you and correct you and make you learn, help you learn. So.
Okay, well, congratulations. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing, which I think what struck me, more reading outside of Hislop, but like one of Hislop's books was published by a British, a Scottish Christian publication or newspaper, and this guy, the owner of this newspaper was the editor and publisher and of his own newspaper, and he published a whole bunch of tracts as well. And one of the books that he sold was this book that Alexander Hislop wrote on the same theme of the two Babylons against Roman Catholicism. But what I realized in reading this newspaper and in reading other writings from this era that I got to look at when I was at the National Library of Scotland in Edinburgh is that there was a zeal and an energy towards evangelism in all of these, in most of these churches in Scotland and in England, and their motives were good in that sense, and I think part of the problem with believing the idea that Christmas and Easter are pagan, and just pointing that out to other believers, is that that's not it's not discipleship. Well, first of all, it's not true, but it's not. You don't have a concern. I think a lot of the people who do it don't have a concern for the soul of this other person that you're trying to share this with. Instead, they have a concern to be right, or something. I don't know. I just want people to get the point that in the era that Alexander Hislop was writing in, it's like today. There's evangelical Christians everywhere who have a zeal and a heart for sharing the word of the Lord and sharing the truth of the gospel and seeing people's lives changed by God's grace. So, I think in that sense, maybe part of what Hislop's intentions were good, but I think he just went off, way off track on some of the things that he argued for, and yeah.
Great. Well, hey, we really appreciate you taking the time and coming in to chat with us today. Normally, our interviews are done over Skype, but it was nice having you here
live,
and having you next to me. No doubt about that. We are extremely excited for Andre and the things that he is going to go on to do, and for the opportunities that he's going to have. And we are grateful that we have such a good Bible student graduating first from the 3-year program at TorahResource Institute. That's amazing. All right, well, we hope that everybody enjoyed it. I know that everybody's on kind of a different calendar than others. We're celebrating Shavuot tonight, Tuesday night into Wednesday, and so if you're not, I hope you enjoy this, recorded or whatever. I want to thank everybody in the chat room who showed up without even knowing that we were going to be on air. It was great to see everybody there. And if you want to take classes at TorahResource Institute, we'd encourage you to do so. Go to TorahResource.com, and you can hover over our Institute tab, find all the information you need to know there. There's 1, 2, and 3-year programs, and of course, the one thing that we hope is that the people who graduate from this school will go on to honor our great God and Savior, Yeshua, the Messiah.